Ms. Heshmatikhah.
I'm honored that I can speak here for my people in Iran who have to pay for freedom with their own blood. For 8-year-old Kian, for 16-year-old Nika, for 22-year-old Mohammad Karami, and for 39-year-old Mohammad Hosseini. And I hope that my words today will land and be put into action. But I also feel frustrated. The danger and urgency surrounding Iran is not a subject that has come out of the blue. We have allowed this through years of pursuing a policy of dialogue, rapprochement, and impunity towards the regime in Iran. And Iranian human rights have always come second to nuclear deals or attempts to trade. Urgent and effective measures from the international community, even in this dire situation, are still lacking. I wonder how often we have protested just outside this building and repeatedly shouted the same slogans. Almost 5 months have passed since the death of Jina Amini. Almost 4 years have passed since the uprisings against the regime in 2019, resulting in at least 1,500 deaths in just 3 days. Almost 35 years have passed since the 1988 massacre of 30,000 political prisoners in Iran, for which current President Raisi is responsible but never held accountable. Closer to home, we see the assassination of Ali Motamed in 2015, of Ahmad Molanisi in 2017, or the attack on Sadegh Zarza in 2020. It's time to put the human rights of the people of Iran first and not to turn a blind eye anymore. We have to support the Iranian people in their brave fight, and we can do so, starting with the following actions on a national level, and some of which should have been taken years ago. 1, and I'm repeating words of other speakers here today because we are collectively and repeatedly saying the same thing. The IRGC and the Ministry of Intelligence of Iran should be put on the national terrorist list as well as the European terrorist list. Instead of waiting for the EU to take action, the Netherlands can have greater impact by taking this step nationally whilst pushing for the EU designation simultaneously. Both entities are responsible for the atrocities I just mentioned earlier, as well as murdering the people of Iran and waging war through proxy militias in the region. 2, close the Iranian embassy as soon as possible, because time and time again, we have seen that the embassies of Iran are merely headquarters for the Iranian regime to intimidate, threaten, or kill opponents and activists. In 2018, the Iranian diplomat Asadollah Assadi and his accomplices were caught red-handed trying to plant a bomb at a big gathering of Iranian opposition members, some of whom were Iranian Dutch citizens. The investigation discovered a list of 289 names of individuals and companies in Europe that are on the regime's payroll. And I'd like to emphasize that this case only concerns one Iranian diplomat, and there are many more with the exact same job description. Sanctions on persons associated with the IRGC and the intelligence services and freezing their assets will remain impossible to implement as long as the Iranian embassy and thus the IRGC and the intelligence services are allowed to operate freely. Finally, diplomatic and economic ties with the regime in Iran must be severed. This includes negotiations for the review of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The JCPOA is currently a major pain point for the Iranian regime, and the regime needs this deal more than the other way around. And I'd like to end on 2 notes. Most speakers here today are more than aware of the risk they take by speaking out against this regime. And unfortunately, dear members, this regime has repeatedly proven that it has a long arm that also reaches into the Netherlands. 2, we are aware or we have to be aware of individuals downplaying the revolution that is happening and suggest measures that are not in line with the Iranian people's demands. The Iranian regime is known for its infamous 80-20% tactics. Within this tactic, it employs lobbyists who speak 80% bad about the regime in order to sound legitimate, just to be able to use the other 20% in favor of the interests of the regime itself, spread misinformation, or discredit resistant movements. These lobbyists come in the form of credible people, such as journalists, professors, and policy advisors, and it is important to stay critical of the information you receive at all times. Relief to ordinary Iranians is the fall of this regime, nothing more and nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heshmatikhah. Your 5 minutes, Ms. Korashi.